Welcome to another Airbrush Asylum video. This is the Joker Part 3 tutorial. If you haven't already, check out Part 1 and 2 so that you know how I got up to this part in the artwork. This part's going to focus on creating more and more texture within the face. We're going to try and get most of that completed. So to do that, we're going to do more erasing techniques and combined with some freehand airbrushing. So very similar to what we did in parts 2, or we started to do in part 2, so you're going to see a lot more of that progress and to really build the structure of the face. Now the colour that I'm using at the moment is a detail black, so this is Createx Illustration Colours black mixed with transparent base and some reducer. So you can just tint this as dark as you like. I'm pretty much running it almost solid black, but I add the transparent base so that we don't eliminate over our previous detail. So at the moment I'm using a microdot template. This is Dru Blair microdot template, available from School of Realism. I'll pop some links in the description to the products used within this video, so go check them out if you want to grab yourself any of the items used within this tutorial series. So now I'm switching back to my dowel, and I'm going to start to do some harsh erasing. You can see I'm focusing on the lower edge of those sort of divots within the makeup, those shadings. And that's giving it that appearance that it looks like it's a divot rather than just sitting on top. And switching to my Faber-Castell eraser pencil, this has the white and the pink end, the white being the harsher end, the pink being the softer. So if you've watched parts 1 and 2, you've heard me explain all this before, but just in case you've just jumped onto this video, I just thought I'd explain that to you so you know what I'm using. For more detailed descriptions, definitely go watch parts 1 and 2. So continuing to erase. So I'm only taking off a little bit of that overspray to create some texture. But you can see how much is actually showing up just by working on those light areas which almost look like there's no paint there at all. So depending on how long the paint's been sprayed on there, you can switch between the white or the pink. You'll probably notice I do use the white a lot more within this particular artwork, but it really depends on what you're doing. If you were wanting more subtle sort of erasing techniques within a skin texture, then you may, utilize the pink a lot more. So best thing to do, just have a play around with it. If you're not sure, have a bit of this synthetic paper as a bit of a scrap piece of paper that you can test it on. And if this is the first time to the channel, welcome. If you're a regular viewer, welcome back. We'd love to have you as part of our community. Feel free to hit subscribe, tap on that bell icon, that'll notify you every time I put out new content. And by all means, if you like the video, like it and share it out to someone who you think would benefit from this particular content and help us build this airbrushing community together. So back grabbing my airbrush there, and this is a Iwata CMC Plus Micron. This runs a 0.23mm needle, and I'm just using that detail black to further shade the nose area of the Joker. You'll notice I'm adding a bit of stippling there as well as drop shadows to create that 3D appearance. Being nice and careful to control my overspray. And while I've got the colour, I'm just going to darken up some of the areas around the top of the lips there where the makeup is moving into the white of the face makeup. This will also help to eliminate some of that overspray. But the overspray in certain areas helps to make it look like the makeup's a little bit smudged, which is that unevenness that I want. So you can kind of utilize the overspray to your advantage as well. So you'll notice here I'm using the airbrush first to establish some of the textures. I'm not just spraying flat. And then I'll come in with the eraser pencils and dowels and all that sort of stuff to really manipulate it and get it to look a bit more accurate. And if you are enjoying this style of painting, it's not something that I do a lot of the time. I'm not a huge photorealistic painter. I definitely not a portrait painter. It's not something that I really super enjoy. But if you do enjoy doing this style of artwork, then you need to jump on School of Realism and check out Dru Blair. He does classes for this particular style of painting, and I highly recommend it. I mean, this is my take on it. There's a whole lot more that you would learn from attending one of his classes. So we've been fortunate enough to host him for, this will be the 5th year this year, and I can safely say that he definitely changed the way I paint. So even if you've been airbrushing for a month, or you've been airbrushing for over 10 years, doesn't matter how long, you will get value out of one of his classes. So continuing with the eraser pencil there, removing more and more, building up those textures, so just removing that paint. And also play around with the pencil itself when you are removing the paint, so try sort of dabbing it, try circular motions, left and right, up and down, using it on an angle. All those sort of things are going to vary your erasing. Alright, so that'll give you different effects. So depending on what kind of artwork you're doing, just play around with it and see what works best for that particular artwork. So switching back to the dowel now to get some of those creases under the eye, those wrinkly bits. So this is obviously, because it's a sharpened dowel, it's going to be a lot more accurate to remove those real bright highlights. And if you want those sort of real definite white highlighted sort of lines, then utilize the dowel for that by all means. It's a lot better than the eraser pencil, even if the eraser pencil has been sharpened. So back with the microdot template and just adding some airbrushing dots in the makeup as well. So just to add a little bit more depth to the texturing of the makeup. So the microdot template has different size dots going from extremely fine and then larger towards the top. So the center of the template has the finer dots, and then they work out from there. Now continuing on with some freehand airbrushing, just to pull out some of those creases above the mouth area there within the makeup. So adding some of those deeper creases by being up nice and close with my airbrush, only pulling back a little bit and moving that airbrush as I go. Remember to keep the air pressed down at all times and just control the amount of paint flow with the trigger finger. So pull back for more paint and return the trigger back into its original position so that you shut the paint off, so that you do not keep any paint residue stuck within the front of the nozzle, because the next time you go to press down for air, you will get that paint splurting out on your work, which you don't want. So be sure to use the correct double action technique. You'll see me use that all throughout this video. So just keep an eye on my trigger finger if you want to focus a little more on that and pick up some tips if you're just starting out with the airbrush. You can see also varying my height's going to vary my shadows. Up close will give me a more defined shadow, and up really close I can get a real sharp defined line, or just a sharper shadow depending on how far away I am. So continue to use your reference and basically mimic the shadows as close to the reference as possible. By all means, you still want to add your own style, and that will come through anyway with your airbrushing skill and the way you do things. So even though you'd maybe attempt this same artwork, it's going to come out a little bit different in the end, which is a good thing. You want that, you want your own touch to it. So grabbing my dowel again and utilizing that real sharp point just to really pick out those crease highlights. So I'm focusing more on the top of each one of those creases just to really brighten those sections up and scratch back to the white of the paper. Also using the dowel in the eye section just to pull out some of those real bright highlights. So you can see how you can be so accurate with the dowel. That's the beauty of it. Utilising the airbrush again to do some freehand shading, just to further deepen some of those shadows. So working back over the top with the eraser pencil, using the white edge just to pull out some brighter highlights. So these will be a bit softer when I use the eraser pencil, so that's why I'm jumping between the two versus obviously the dowel versus the eraser pencil. And just take your time. The texturing is quite laborious, but it does make all the difference. Now I'm coming in with some flesh. So this is just a flesh that I mixed up, and I'm just spraying that on the neck area. You can use the Wicked flesh tone if you don't want to mix one up, or if you are using Trident, by all means use that. If you do want to mix up your own, then use white, yellow, red, and some drops of blue. If you want it to be lighter, just keep adding a bit more white to your mix, okay? Now I'm continuing with detail black. And just getting the side of that jaw in, as well as more texturing. So finishing off a few more textures, just freehand with the airbrush there on the chin area and along the jaw. And now we're going to switch back to the dowel and begin to render even more. So very carefully just continue to remove the highlights. You'll notice that I've got my reference image to scale on top of my artwork there, and every now and then I'm just lifting that up and down just to see where I want to put my highlights. I don't use this method all the way through the artwork, just to get some of the key points, and then I go freehand from there, or just utilizing the reference. So just continuing on, adding more and more texture. So it's a very layer upon layer scenario. As I mentioned from the start of this video, there is lots and lots of texturing, but it's definitely well worth it for the end result. So just take your time, utilize the dowel, use the eraser pencil, and get the best representation that you can get, and as accurate as you can to the reference. So a few softer highlights there with the eraser pencil. You can see there's less paint build up on that area, so removing it, it's just removing a little bit only. And we're getting that much more subtle texture. So a bit more work with the dowel where the lip and mouth makeup meets the chin. Just removing some of those bright white highlights. And I need to be quite aggressive with that dowel because that red paint has dried. So really need to get in there and remove it to get back to the white of the paper. So that's pretty much where we're going to leave it for part 3 of the Jerker tutorial. So I do hope that you enjoyed watching this video, and until next time, go grab your airbrush, do some amazing artwork yourself, and I will see you again very, very soon in the next video. Bye for now.